Just answer customers' questions. It's as simple as that.
Today, I'm speaking with Ed Breault, CMO at Malbek, a legal technology company specializing in contract lifecycle management solutions. What is it like to then jump over to a different type of industry?
I was like, wow, there's so much rich opportunity here to disrupt this $30 billion industry. I need to learn what keeps them up at night, their objectives, what is success for them, their language, walk in their shoes a bit. I'm in month 2 right now, so it's still early days.
How did you start learning this?
We sat down and we re-looked at, once you get that hook, the rest is much easier. You've opened that door to be successful.
Welcome to Top CMO. I'm chatting with Ed Breault, CMO at Malbek. And Ed, I love your background in MarTech, where you've been a marketer, marketing to marketers. But what is it like to then jump over to a different type of industry, the legal technology industry, where the industry itself is not known for being an early adopter of technological solutions? You're providing a technological solution. How does your mind, your mind space have to shift when you've done 20 years of kind of one type of audience, and now suddenly you have a new audience?
Yeah, I think it's one of those shifts where even if I didn't leave, I should have done some of these things, which is re-engage with the personas. Because even marketers of today aren't the same that they were. But really, it was the folks that in the legal tech space, they're all brand new to me. Legal, procurement, finance, sales. Everywhere there's contracts in that contract lifecycle, those folks that add value in the contracting phases of a business. Those are the people that I needed to learn. I need to learn what keeps them up at night. Their emotional pain, their objectives, what is success for them, their language. I had to learn all of that and, walk in their shoes a bit. So did a lot of, I'll call it anthropology, if that makes sense, like study these humans, in the deepest way so that, I as a marketer can create experiences, create value, utility that meet them in their moment of need along their journey, and then understand how they would think about the pain points that I would address with gain points with the technology of Malbek.
Well, and so how do you approach that? Because you've been, I think, on the job not long, I think just a few months. What is your advice for other marketers, other CMOs about how to engage in that process, particularly when you have deep experience in an area? Maybe it's changing, maybe it's evolving, like you said, for marketers. But you already kind of speak the language. You have a baseline. You go into a new area that could be an exciting opportunity. And if I was going to say one common thread among your career is that sort of using technology to solve sort of unsexy problems that when businesses scale, right? Whether that's contracts, whether that's, in your past digital asset management, other things. That's probably, so there's a throughput, but it also can be daunting, particularly when you have a well of experience that you can draw upon to go something new. So you're 3 months on the job. Maybe there's another CM out there who's going to like an adjacent field where they don't have deep knowledge. They know about marketing. What is your advice? The kind of the step 1, 2, 3 that you're experiencing right now? Yeah.
And I know the worst thing to do with podcasts is like date stamp things, but yeah, I'm in month 2 right now. So it's still early days, and did a lot of, I like what you said, unsexy. I like to think that Malbek is the Justin Timberlake of contracting.
Okay, there you go. That's the new positioning. Yeah. That's the central unified idea. On the site, you're gonna we're the Justin Timberlake. We're not in sync. We're Justin Timberlake. Yeah. But you're okay. You're making something, which could be a very lucrative business, right? Which is making unsexy things sexier to an audience. But sometimes the reason they're unsexy is because they're done a certain way and built up over time because there's, compliance issues and legal issues and all these people that you now need to reach.
And that's what's cool about and why I joined. The origins of this company are based in technology, not in, I'll call it, the legacy business of where a lot of the competitors come from. Like they came from legacy and sort of more of that unsexy business, and they've productized a lot of legacy into their platforms, and that's created a lot of technical debt. Whereas Malbek, we basically said our founders, they had, they got to a point and they're like, we want to build a better product, something this, because they had the problem at their previous companies. They were the ones who were managing the legal operations processes and had legal tech in their stack. And it was some of their biggest pain points. And they said, hey, we've got a vision. This vision is to build a platform for legal operations that does not exist today. And so I think them attacking it and us now attacking it from a marketing standpoint with technology first origins has brought a whole new narrative to the GCs, general counsels out there.
So how did you start learning this? Is there anything you did right or you did wrong that you've like, oh, I probably should have done this way now in hindsight?
Absolutely. I always start with data. I'm definitely data first in terms of research. So pulled a lot of market data on the space with companies who cover it. It's a formal category out there. Companies like Gartner, Forrester, who cover the space, just binged on their research. Yeah. Yes. Start with the market data to get this understanding of the total addressable market. It's a $30 billion industry. And I was just floored by that. I didn't realize, I'd been in marketing, MarTech. That's like my world. That's all I was seeing. And it didn't cross over into that space. But when I found it, discovered it, I was like, wow, there's so much rich opportunity here to disrupt this $30 billion industry. So I started with that market data, and then I applied where is the highest growth potential? And that was absolutely in the enterprise segment of industry, call it 500 million and up in annual revenue.
Okay. So you start with just market overall. Now you're trying to try to apply a little bit more, just, I guess, focus for where should, and I don't, did any of that exist before you started or no? Or were you hired to sort of kind of set a direction that Malbek's going to go?
That was very much it. It was there, but it wasn't formalized into a strategic long range growth plan. So that's what I've been working on, bringing on new capabilities of growth, how to penetrate into these other sectors to grow that sales addressable market from the theoretical. And then I got into understanding some other things in the market, like some macroeconomic changes that were happening, some societal changes of the people. So I started with data, but then I'm looking at the people, and you have a lot of these folks who are the economic buyer in the space. These GCs they're now digital natives with technology, and they're coming into leadership, and they're looking at their organizations and saying, there is a better way out there, and they're that transformative leader. So it was really the market, the legacy, the new leadership coming into play, and the growth potential that I modeled.
And how do you get over some of the resistance? Because this is not an industry necessarily of early adopters, so much so that, I know lawyers and law firms and others that where it's like, we don't even put anything in the cloud, right? Like we don't trust the cloud, and if we're not even at that point, that can be a significant obstacle. And there is going to be, a wide range of sort of adoption of technology, but you're going to encounter that in the legal field, which is like for security reasons, for other things, we just can't even do that. So how do you start thinking? Do you try to overcome some of those objections and or do you be like, okay, if someone's like, hasn't even adopted like storing things in the cloud, they're not our customer, and we're gonna just not focus on them right now because it's going to be an uphill battle to convince them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's the art of the ideal customer profile modeling, the psychographics that you were mentioning, some of those attributes of the account. Those are massively important to understand. So that's one of the first things I did too. I got with the founders of the company, the sales team, and the marketing organization, we sat down and we re-looked at modeling out the ideal customer profile from technographics, firmographics, psychographics, geographically, where are they? And then what are those key attributes of them? Are they more advanced in thinking? Do they already have similar technologies? They just need better technologies. Yeah, super important because you can
give us some insight. That what are some of those aspects of the ideal customer profile that A, make total sense, and are there any that B maybe are surprising, are a little bit that you came in and thought you'd be going after customer A, but it turns out no, that's not, even though it seems obvious, that's actually a hard customer to sell.
Yeah, I think the industries were easier to understand. The revenue bands were also easier to understand. It was really the psychographics and the attributes for me that I was surprised by. The idea of having the psychographics, meaning you have that transformational leader in the org who actually wants to be, I call it, weaponized with a change plan for their company. Otherwise, they're not going to fight through the legacy red tape, bureaucracy. They're not going to go to the table and, I'll call it, burn some political capital to make what could be a risky bet, because there's research that says 50% of CLM implementations fail. Nobody wants to be that wrong 50%. So that was very surprising to me, those psychographics, for sure.
How do you then think about or identifying that transformative leader? I mean, is this like, hey, I went to the LinkedIn profile, it says transformative leader. Sometimes people put that on there. Okay, there's one transformative leader. Do you look at any other indications from the company itself? Do you look at, for instance, something that we've done for clients instead of our lead gen work is like, okay, when people transition jobs, right? So when someone shifts a job, you come into a new job, then maybe that's an opportunity because there's sort of this sense that you're going to bring a new system or some new energy or something fresh. Maybe you were hired for that reason because we need change. What are sort of the markers if someone's not going to identify easily for you, I am transformative leader, who is part of your ideal profile?
Yeah, for sure. Are they in that position? Is transforming a priority for them? So that what you said is exactly what we're doing. We've got systems that we're listening for various different triggering events out there. Some data sources let you know when folks transition jobs. You could look at their title as well and understand it. You can see when you're from an account-based marketing standpoint, when you're doing research on an ICP account, understand some of those leaders, what they're putting out in market. Are they producing content that speaks to it? Are they sharing, liking, sort of understanding their sort of digital body language and fingerprints? We can pick up on some of that for sure. And then, like the various different industry pings that we use with intent data shows us, like, we can actually put our sites on our ICP accounts from a technographic, firmographic, and then we get this intent data that shows what exactly they're putting out in the market on third-party data networks. So, where they have head and long tail keywords that match like transformative topics, we'll definitely put them in our sites and go after them.
So how much of this is, you mentioned account-based marketing. How much of it is account-based marketing, meaning, and for those of you who are listening who aren't familiar, just like, these are our exact targets. We're treating them like VIP leads. We're really getting to know them deep. What percent of time is spent on that versus, more like we're going to look for a category or a type, and we're going to be much less focused and much more broad. How do you think about that split?
For sure. I look at it as, there's inbound and then there's ABM. And then within ABM, there's strategic, there's named, and there's programmatic. So we actually have 3 different flavors. And I would split those by 50-50. So inbound and ABX. Inbound is that marketing flywheel. That's one of the best ways to earn commercial traffic. And you do that over time. You do that with the marketing flywheel. You do that with great content marketing. You do that with great SEO, et cetera. You do that with great lead magnets of content that are out there and experiences. And then ABM is the other half, but that's where you've got a lot more levers and I call it amount of powder to spend on creating the demand cycle versus just being there whenever another demand cycle was created, maybe by a competitor. So with ABM, you're actually creating the demand cycle, plus you're doing responsive demand capture earlier on in the process. So of that 50%, you've got about a third of that broken down by strategic and named and programmatic. Programmatic, which is all system driven, it's marketing automation. Named is one to few, which are like clusters of accounts. So these are very bespoke campaigns for industries or for certain personas. And then one-to-one is absolutely VIP tailored, where you're making a bigger bet on a larger payoff, and you're actually going after a wider buying center. And I looked at a lot of the win-loss data from my last company and even this company. And I got down to one qualitative factor, which is called extraordinary influence, is what I call it. Extraordinary influence is why and when we win. And so that's why, if you're going to win a consensus buying process, you have to do consensus selling and make sure you get to, a large portion of that buying center. And we do that with account-based marketing.
And you mean by that, when you say extraordinary influence, what you mean is that you have extraordinary influence within their organization. You have a buyer, you've got to the right person who has an extraordinary influence to make it happen in an individual. What is the nature of what do you mean by when you've achieved extraordinary influence, which means you're going to convert?
Yeah, you're saying exactly it, which is buying center penetration. So that, and oftentimes if they're coming inbound, I call that the scout. And you'll have one individual who represents a buying center coming inbound, doing research. They're researching the market, and they're coming back to a group, a buying center of folks from maybe various different stakeholders in different functional areas. And then you've got layers of, decision-making made there. And if you're just talking to that scout, you're at a disadvantage to those who are talking to everyone in that buying center who has an influence, a ratifier, an economic buyer, just an influencer with on the decision. So that's extraordinary influence means that everybody in the buying center, to as much as you can penetrate, knows your brand, knows your strategic relevance, differentiation, economic, impact from a value proposition standpoint, feels comfortable, is consuming your content. And actually, whenever they hear about you being a potential option in there, they're not hearing it for the first time. They feel comfortable with you being evaluated in the process. So it's getting to all those folks. And that's not just I'll call it the folks within the organization, but it's also those around too. So that's partnerships as well. What's important to understand is, what's that tech stack look like in the organization and those complementary technologies. And if you have technology partners in the account as well, that's another layer of extraordinary influence that's also earned. And then also it's with, influencers in the market and analysts. I mentioned Gartner and Forrester. If they're recommending you, or they're if you're being seen with other industry experts. We've got some awesome industry experts we work with that talk about Malbek and talk about some of the same thought leadership topics. If you're brought up in those word of mouth conversations, that's great. And the gold, and I absolutely love this, and it's it's something you just cannot fake, which is that customer social proof. When you've got a customer who goes on to, a ratings and review site like G2, and they leave a review, and it's a 5-star review, and they talk about why they chose you and why they're willing to put their personal brand on yours for somebody else to get some research utility to help. That is the ultimate in terms of influence, because that's where trust is truly built.
How do you think about then, in the midst of all of this? How do you think about buying cycles and reaching and sort of timing, reaching people at the right moment? There can be individuals or groups that have extraordinary influence, but there could also be moments of extraordinary influence in an organization, right? Where no matter how good an idea is, if you sort of hit the timing wrong, this is, you mentioned that 50% of implementations fail. They don't want to be the ones that fail. And so it's just not the right time for them. How do you start thinking about the time dimension when, usually if we're talking about an enterprise client, it's all of their contracts. You've got to kind of be at the right place at the right time, or else stay top of mind long enough to when they can pull the trigger.
That's right. Yeah, I call that meet them where they're at. And that's one of our first goals when we work with a new brand, which is where are they in their buying journey? And once you're able to establish that, you're then able to gauge, okay, what's the playbook I want to run to give them those moments that matter for them right now? So if they're super early stage, you're talking about them sort of identifying their problem. Once they know they've got an issue and they know there's a solution, quantifying what that problem is, helping them build a case for change. And then you as a brand having those capabilities to offer once you find out and meet them where they're at. Once they know they've got the issue, helping them, with how would they actually go out and evaluate the market. So having things like an RFP template or, a buyer's guide, because now they're in a buying stage, and having somebody capabilities in-house that can be a resource for them, a concierge, if you will, of, identifying content that would meet their needs, having the content arc, in your brand assets to be able to serve up at those moments. And then, once they are ready to engage in commercial conversations, having the ability to qualitatively and quantitatively understand what are the right set of requirements that they have for, and then how can you meet them? And so that sort of qualifying event, having that established in place. And then, it's really the timing of getting to understanding where they are in their journey, and then what do you have inside your brand in order to offer them to move them along and be valuable and build trust, which is ultimately super important. And what you're doing is from a brand promise standpoint, you're establishing your brand, what that promise is. But then when you actually deliver, that's when you truly get to what did you deliver on what you promised?
Well, and I think one of the challenges, if you're not talking to that sort of that extraordinary influencer within the organization, is you just have two added challenges, which is one, your messaging has to be so clear that basically, and so on point, that a facsimile, a photocopy of your message communicated by someone else has to still be clear enough, right? So if you're not talking to that decision maker or the person who has the influence, because basically you need them to relay the right points. That's challenge one. Challenge two, though, is that you now have to address the needs of potentially two different people with different goals, right? You have that, maybe it's the scout or the gatekeeper or whoever it is. They may have their own agenda in this of what you have to do to communicate, so that they, look good to others. But then two, you have that other person that may have, so what is important for that scout may not be what's important for the other person who you need to sign off on. So what do you think is easier? Is it just do what you can to get to the right person, to the extraordinary influencer? It's easier to do that than get the other stuff right. Or are you like, hey, no matter what you do, at some point, you're not going to get there, and you've got to hone your message, and you've got to have buying guide for general counsel plus buying guide for, legal operations person. And you got to actually be on point on both if you're going to have to deal with both. What's easier? What's the shorter path?
Yeah, I think those that do it we'll get to easier. None of it's easy, but those that do it well teach, tailor, then take control of that situation. Having the ability to know who you're talking to, know what what is important to them, what's the altitude of problems that they're trying to solve, and then you being able to adapt to all of those. I would say like the perfect timing of the easiest is when you can find out they're at that sort of sweet spot of getting in market, and you planted a seed, planted an idea that could be thought leadership that could be a better way, commercial insight, messaging. You reframed the way they think about their problem better than anybody else did. Once you get that hook, the rest is much easier because you're the one who's on the downhill and everybody else is still pushing uphill.
Or a more practical way, we do some of this with our clients in our own work, is sometimes you don't have to communicate all the answers that you want them to know. Like, this is the answer for how you solve this. This is the answer for how you solve this. This is the answer. You just got to get them to ask the questions you want. And those questions will ideally be questions that kind of navigate them to you. So if you have the question, which is like, hey, of all of the, software tools you might be using, regardless of who you choose, ask this question. And maybe I'll give you an example. You can give me a more specific one back, but you're saying like, okay, maybe your tool is more flexible and it can adapt to the situation. Then you say, ask yourself, well, hey, when my needs change in a year, when my needs change in 2 years, are we going to have to do this all over again? Do we have to do this? Or ask the provider, can you be flexible enough to change with me? And if you know they're asking that question and you know it may be in your Gartner quadrants and other things like that, that you're high on flexibility, you get them to ask that question, they're going to come to you. And that can be a way to try to kind of outflank other competitors.
Yeah. I mean, I think in our business, it's how are you preparing for not being the wrong 50% of failed implementation? So they're not thinking they're going to fail at that point in time. They're thinking that I've got a problem. I'm going to go solve it. I'm going to buy the best technology. But is that the best partner to help you, who's seen you, can grab you by the hand and have you avoid any of the problems and get to value quickly? That there's two different paths there. That would absolutely be one. Getting them think about the problems they don't yet know they'll have down the future. That's where you also establish trust and are effectively training them.
Well, and that's where you can add value. I forget. I think it's a famous it was like a strange political reference, but Donald Rumsfeld quote or something was like, "We know what we don't know. We know what we know, but we don't know what we don't know. And if you can help them know what they don't know that they don't know, then you can add a lot of value." And maybe that's one of those. Did that make sense at all, Ed? It did in my head.
But got some great quotes. I use a lot of those all the time. Yeah.
So there you go. But in terms of adding value, understanding what someone's needs are, understanding an ideal persona, that's an added layer, right? Which is like, okay, they have questions, things they don't know, you can answer them. They have things they think they know, maybe you can shape that. But if you can help them know what they don't even know, they don't know, then you can add, you're a valuable partner, right? Because very rare that you can find someone who can do that. And certainly in a partner doing a major implementation, maybe they can help you with some of the ways that you could fail that you don't know. And that's the expertise that you and Malbek bring.
I think success, I love what you just said. If you can get the prospect to say, tell me something I don't know, and then you respond with value, and you actually have that knowledge, you've opened that door to be successful. We've actually had that several times when they're like, okay, great. We did the requirements. We got the reference calls. We see that your customers love you. We did the research. We know the risks, but tell me something I don't know. And that gives you the chance to be a thought leader to them, to be that trusted advisor, which we all want, especially when it comes to these transformational events. You want a trusted advisor, somebody who will proactively reach out and be there for you, have you avoid any potential challenges and maximize on the upside of things.
And also it's part of value that any business can offer, because the alternative to get like a well-executed software implementation, transformation, whatever it is, the alternative is like be really well planned out, right? Like know every contingency, have a plan B for everything. But the issue is that for most of us, like that's difficult. It's something new. We don't know, and we might miss something. So if you're not going to have it all mapped out and have plan A and plan B and plan C and contingency plans, alternate approach is have a trusted advisor that will help you through whatever may come your way. And so We've got you. We've got your back. So either A, in your marketing, and particularly, as we talk about this kind of like sort of sales driven or lead driven kind of oriented marketing, it's either A, you've got to be very well planned out with this kind of methodology that is a methodology people haven't seen before, or B, you've got to be a trusted partner. So whatever comes our way down the road, we're there with you. And if you're by our side, you'll be fine. Either way. To wrap up, Ed, how do you think about, do you think we've gotten pretty far down, like sort of sales psychology, lead psychology? Are those important things that marketers should know that sometimes don't have this kind of like lead generation or sales generation background, particularly if your field that's not SaaS software or something like that, where it tends to be a little bit more oriented that way?
Absolutely. Marketing is the leading indicator of sales. Sales is the leading indicator of customer success. If marketing doesn't understand sort of the downstream of the value creation in your process, how do you know what you should be doing? How do you know what your objectives are? How do you know how you're going to be successful? Marketing absolutely needs to know the value they're creating and generating from all the various different options out there. Because how I simplify what marketing is that it just makes sales easier. It makes sales easier for the buyer. Marketing makes sales easier for the sellers. And if marketing can burn its powder, spend its money, spend its resources, creating value and leveraged opportunities for sales, then you're doing the right things. For you not to know is marketing with no direction.
Well, well said. And it's one of the reasons why a lot of marketers should spend more time on sales calls, should spend more time understanding products. And it's one of those things that when I talk to a lot of, from CMOs on down, people are like, I never have time for this, but then when I do it, I'm like, it's like such time well spent. Just one of those things where you sort of make the time, you find the time, and it just gives you that much more insight, which makes a lot of marketing questions that are hard otherwise, if you don't have that firsthand experience, a lot easier. You just draw from experience, you can see it. And I like your notion of what is value creation at every point in the chain, from top of the funnel all the way down to close of the sale, all the way down to you're now a happy customer. Are we consistently, imparting and adding value? And if we do that, it's pretty hard for us to be an unsuccessful business if we're adding value at every kind of handoff that has to happen for a successful client relationship.
Yeah, a tactical recommendation for marketers how to do that. We actually have technology. It's called Chorus.ai or Gong. There's all these conversational intelligence platforms out there that record all the calls. We actually look at all the questions. We look at the questions that are asked in calls. We look at the questions that are asked in RFPs, and we create content to make it discoverable early. Marcus Sheridan is, I don't know if you know Marcus, but awesome evangelist for sales and marketing. He had this super cool quote, which is like the synthesis for any content marketing strategy, which is just answer customers' questions. Simply, just answer those questions. What questions would they ask? Have an answer, make that answer available. It's as simple as that. Marketing's job is to answer customers' questions. And whoever does it earlier and becomes discoverable shapes the rest of their buying journey.
Well said. Ed Breault, CMO at Malbek, and you have the maybe brain of a marketer, but the heart of a sales operator, and sounds like that serves you well, and interested to see exciting and great things from Malbek ahead.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, Ben.